All right. So thank you everyone for joining us for the third session of the day. Hopefully you all enjoyed hearing Rebecca talk about Voter Filer Act. And now we're going to move on to talk a little bit about storytelling and the powerful storytelling that can be involved in VITA. So let me just run. So first off, welcome everyone. If you're not familiar, I'm Darren Liddell. I serve on the TON steering committee and do many things with the Taxpayer Opportunity Network, and happy to tell you a bit about this session. All right, so first thing, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. You probably saw upon entry that the session's being recorded. Everyone is muted upon entry to ensure the highest quality experience for everyone. So please keep it that way. You are very much the master of your mute button, and let's keep everyone muted, except for when we get to the breakout portion of the agenda where you all get a chance to talk, share about what you've heard, share some of your best practices, some of the things that you've experienced. And then if you have any technical issues, Justin is behind the scenes and is happy to help kind of get some of those things resolved. But yeah, if you all, the chat of course is open and there'll be a time for question and answer after the presenters are done. So please ask questions, even if it's much before the Q&A session. We'll do our best to get to most of those questions as we can, or kind of pool the most popular questions. All right, so what's going to happen in this workshop? We're currently in the agenda, but very soon you'll hear from the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities in Catalyst Miami. Again, there'll be a Q&A. We'll then have breakout rooms, and then we'll close out the session and talk about next steps. So here's who you're going to hear from. I'm going to do some quick introductions, but before I introduce them, I just want to challenge you all to think a bit about the power of storytelling. Storytelling is one of the most powerful things I feel like whether we realize it or not, it's something that I feel like the world kind of galvanizes around. It's the reason that books are so popular. It's the reason that movies are, a multi-billion-dollar industry, or maybe even more than that. But the power of a good story can really do a lot to elevate both your work in VITA and to connect you deeply with someone whose experience may be different from yours. So with that, I'm gonna prime the pump, but I'm gonna pass it over to our first presenter, Jenny Hong, who's going to chat about a few things that she's been working on at the Center for Policy Priorities, and a few things that you all should think about as you're thinking about telling stories. So, Jenny, I'll stop sharing if you want to start sharing.
Awesome. I will do that. Let me just find, I'm like, where in my million different windows that are open right now, where is it? Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Huang from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. It is great to be here with you all today. I feel really grateful that VITACon is still happening. I'm grateful that we can meet virtually, even if we can't in person this year. And hopefully in the future, we will be able to gather in person again. I work at the Center's Get It Back campaign, which is a tax credit outreach campaign. So we focus on making sure that folks are getting their EITC, CTC, and of course, in the past year and a half, done a lot of work on getting non-filers their stimulus checks. And as Darren shared, of course, storytelling is an important part of outreach and the work that you all are doing in your VITA sites. So yeah, just really grateful to be able to talk about this. So before I get started, I have the little chat box open, and I'm very curious where you all are joining from. So if you don't mind sharing your name, your city, and maybe tell me how the weather is where you are. I'm in Tacoma Park, Maryland right now, and the weather is pretty nice. I think it's probably in the 70s right now. It did rain a little bit earlier, but that stopped luckily just in time for me to take my dog on a walk. So very curious where, scattered showers, I see. Okay. Oh, that's funny. It looks like it's been kind of gloomy in different places. This is really fun. Thank you. And I love seeing so many familiar names in the chat too. So many familiar names. I've been to a lot of these places. Also, shout out to Eddie Mendez, who is my personal VITA site coordinator, who's also on the call today. Awesome. All right. So I'll get it started. So today I'm talking about the 7 don'ts of storytelling. So what I'm going to really focus on today is just things that I have learned that really don't work in collecting stories in terms of logistics and what does work. And this is all what I have learned from you all in the field. I am no expert. So please, if you have other tips, drop them in the chat because I think we can definitely learn from each other today. All right, so the first don't that I have for you all is do not, if you may be tempted, right? Of course, there's already a lot of roles and things happening at your tax site, and it can be tempting to ask your tax volunteers, your tax preparers to help you collect stories while they are also preparing taxes. But we all know how hectic and busy the tax preparation service already is. So if possible, if you can recruit a volunteer or intern whose sole role is to focus on interviewing clients for stories, that can just make the whole process go a lot more smoothly for everyone and make sure that it really gets done. So some ideas that we have heard about from other tax sites on how they've managed to do this is some tax sites have recruited volunteers or interns from local journalism or English classes from local colleges. These students already have a lot of the skills that you're looking for. They know how to tell a good story. And so they can really be really helpful in this situation. And even if there's no college nearby, even recruiting from a local high school can be really useful. So your tax preparers are already doing a lot of work. So if you can have someone dedicated to the task, it can make it run a lot more smoothly. Another don't is do not let your client leave without collecting your story. So of course, by the end of the tax preparation session, a lot of clients are already a little bit tired. They might be ready to just like bounce out of there, but if at all possible, try to collect the story while the person is still at the tax site or sometime right after the session, because as we know, it is very difficult to reach people on the phone after someone has already left. So I worked with a wonderful partner, I think in Nashville, Tennessee, or I'm actually not remembering where the partner was from, but I worked with a VITA partner several years ago to try to collect stories, and she was wonderful. She had collected like 50 stories for us to follow up on. And so we had a list of 50 phone numbers to call, and we spent weeks trying to reach people who had already done their taxes. And we had a total of 0 people answer the phone. They didn't know who we were. They didn't recognize the number, and even with leaving voice messages, nobody called us back. So I don't know if I should be personally offended or not, but the point is people are not trying to pick up their phone after they've left. So don't make the same mistake that we did and try to collect stories while the person is there. Another don't is don't wait until the end of the tax season to try to collect your stories. I know there's a lot to do at the beginning of the tax season, a lot to get set up, so it can be tempting to just like wait until later. However, later in the tax season, you might not get the folks that you want to, right? So do try to collect stories as soon as your site opens. We know that a lot of people who claim the EITC, who claim the CTC, right, they are probably the folks that you want to hear stories from because they really appreciate your services and getting the money that they need. And you may be doing the story collecting for advocacy purposes too, right? So if possible, be ready to start at the beginning of February, end of January, so you really don't miss these very important books. This one's a little broad, but don't make it boring. So do try to make it fun in any way you can. Stories are a lot more interesting if you can get a picture of the client before they leave. I know we've tried to take videos of client stories too. Those are a little bit logistically harder, and I don't know if I would recommend that unless you really have someone dedicated to the task, but photo collections are really easy. If you look on, I'm going to shout out Prepare and Prosper's Facebook account. They're always doing an amazing job of collecting stories where you learn so much from them. And just take a look at some of the fun photo booths and uh, social media images that they have for ideas. But we can also help with that. We can help with creating props and anything you might need, but add some of those to your story collection efforts, and that makes it a lot more fun for folks. We've helped people collect stories at like taxathons and Super Saturday events, which is also a great time because that's also a time when you might be offering prizes and treats anyway. So it's just another incentive for folks to leave their stories with you. Amy asked if I can repeat the group. I mentioned prepare and then a little plus sign, prosper. Really great social media, so fun. I have learned a lot from them. Thank you, Darren, for dropping that in the chat. All right, next don't try to interview everyone. Again, another thing that, a mistake that I have done that hopefully you all can learn from. So I was, again, at a tax site. I went to a tax site in Ohio to help collect stories for the day, and it was so fun. And what we ended up doing is we ended up offering, I think, a small gift card to anyone who is willing to be interviewed for a story. And because we were just offering it to everyone, we ended up getting a lot of people who actually did not have very interesting stories to tell. No offense, but just people who were like, yeah, I just came and I got my taxes done and here we are. And so we had a lot of material that we really couldn't use. And so it can be a good idea at the beginning of the tax season to talk to your volunteers and your site coordinator and have them refer clients to you who are particularly talkative or friendly, maybe someone who has received the EATC or the stimulus checks or the CTC, right? And so you're really getting the people that you can get great stories out of. And those folks can talk to you while they're waiting to be reviewed or after the session is over. So yes, don't try to interview everyone. It can be overwhelming to do that. Just interview a few and that's going to be okay. All right, next one is don't improvise. So again, I know that there is a lot to do in the tax season. So it can be tempting to just say, hey, like to your tax preparers, like try to collect a story here and there. However, if there's not a process in place ahead of time, that's really not going to happen. As a tax volunteer, I've tried to collect stories as I'm also doing taxes, and it's just a lot to think about, and I ended up not collecting any. So you really want to make this process as smooth and quick as possible for the client. They've already been at your tax site for a while, maybe waiting virtually or in person, and they want to leave. So try to make it as seamless as possible. So if you are doing this in person, I don't know if your site will be open next year or not, but if you are doing it in person, make sure you have everything ready. So a camera, in case you're taking a picture, have a list of questions to work from. I know Chris later, I think, will be sharing some questions, which are really great. So on our website, we actually have some of these resources, but like discuss with your site beforehand, do you need folks to sign a release form for liability reasons? And then finally, definitely make sure to have a recording device. That can just be your cell phone. It's easy to take voice notes, but that just makes it easier so that you're not like scrambling to write notes as people are talking. And yeah, I know that I do not have a great memory, so if I don't record it, I will miss half of what someone says. So that might just be me, but it's been helpful. And then finally, my last don't start from scratch. So there's tons of materials already available. We have some of them on our website, taxoutreach.org/stories, which links to some resources that we have, including interview questions that we've put together, tips for collecting stories, and for how to write a good story, and a release form that we had our our lawyer look at, so I think it's pretty good. So hopefully this all helped. And if you all have other ideas for how to make the process smoother that I haven't mentioned, please add them in the chat. I know there's really great story collection work that's already happening, and I have pulled a lot of these tips from you all. So credit goes to you all for doing amazing work. And that is really it for me. Do I turn it over to Chris now? All right, Chris, it's all you.
All right. Am I sharing my screen or is Darren going to be sharing? No.
Here, Chris, if you are comfortable sharing, go ahead. If not, I've got it ready
okay.
just in case.
Give me 1 second.
And while Chris is transitioning to sharing his screen, y'all feel free to drop in if you got any questions for Jenny, if you got any examples of things you've done to get stories ready, feel free to drop those in the chat. Yeah, tell the world a little bit.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Moreno, and I work at Catalyst Miami as a program director, and I'm also a member of the Taxpayer Opportunity Network Steering Committee. And so I'm happy to be here to talk to you about the power of storytelling. Why storytelling? I think Darren and Ginny have already covered a lot of reasons, but some other ones to mention is I think we always are focused on data. Like we look at our tax layer reports and we're looking at to see, how much CTC has been collected or ETC has been collected by our site, or how many report things that we finished. But it brings that data to life. So using a story can help better grab the attention of the reader. It can educate you about a specific cause, and it can inspire you to get more involved. I think stories really do bring life, and stories that provide some type of motivation or something to strive for. And so I think there is a lot of power behind a story. And so using that story of maybe 1 or 2 examples to help bring your data to life is really key. So I'm going to go over just some best practices that I've learned, like Jenny said, from probably a number of members here, from my time in nonprofit work, and my time with VITA. So tip 1 is really similar to a lot of other things. What's your goal? So there's going to be some different common goals, whether it's, you're preparing a story for a grant application to increase funding. One thing that we don't think about is we think about the stories of our tax clients, but what about the stories of our volunteers? Why don't, we can use storytelling to increase via volunteer recruitment, get volunteers to share, what is passionate, why do they enjoy doing taxes? I could tell you, if 10 years ago, you would have told me that I'd be a volunteer tax preparer helping people fill out taxes, I would have told you you were crazy, because I didn't understand taxes. Now I really enjoy doing taxes, and I'm on my 8th year now preparing taxes. So stories help with that. Helping donors understand a new problem, or you could be doing it to thank donors who've already given to you and sharing how you created impact in their lives. And stories can inspire trust and loyalty. So what is the goal for the story that's coming up that you're wanting to prepare this story for? And keep that goal in mind throughout the process. There you go. Okay. So the next tip is kind of how to go about collecting stories. So we have an interview structure. Oh, did I miss? Oh, yeah, sorry. So I did miss one. So some best practices for collecting stories are to interview the people that you serve. And I think Jenny talked a lot about, some best practices there in the VITA setting, through formal program evaluation. So as you review your program, and evaluate from different staff members, talk to your program staff, talk to volunteers, find out, for me as a volunteer, there are actually a number of different tax clients that will come in and they say, oh, I specifically want to see Chris. Like I've done their taxes year in and year out for the past 3 or 4 years, and we've built a rapport. And so sometimes if a volunteer has that returning client, maybe and you've already built and established a relationship with that site, maybe they're a person to look at for a possible story. Talk to program staff. Well, I mentioned that. Comment cards, for some sites, if they provide areas for comment cards, sometimes the people who are willing to make like a good comment are sometimes those that would be willing to share their story. I know there had a number of times where some tax clients want to give me money or food or something, and we have to follow, we follow the rules. We can't accept anything, but I'll sometimes encourage, are you willing to share a story? Because that could help us with our grants and raise funds for the organization. So maybe that's a great way to reply, is like, no, I can't accept this, but what about if you're willing to share your story? And then using your tax layer, your VITA reports, sometimes looking to see maybe who are the people who receive the most amount of a tax credit, or someone had a big refund. Sometimes maybe that can help you out to figure out who to reach out to. So when getting your, as Jenny mentioned, having your list of questions is great, and to be ready for when you have the interview, especially if you're going to be recruiting someone who is like right at the end of completing their, having their taxes prepared. So really consider the structure. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable, not only just for the interviewee, but also for the interviewer. And so it's really good to start out with some easy warm-up questions. So really introduce yourself, who you are, why you're doing this, connect it back to that goal. And then talk about how the interview will be used and why it's important. You explain to them that, this is a free service for you, but it does have overhead costs and we need to raise funds for that. Or if it's for a volunteer, we want to get other like-minded volunteers like you to be able to help. And so explain that. Again, get the interviewee talking, give them some easy questions just to ease their nerves and get them into the swing of things, so then they feel more comfortable. So, just asking them who they are, how are they connected to the organization, and what do they do, or what services did they receive? Now, for the body, for the meat and potatoes of the interview, I created a little general 3-part parts of the interview, but and this kind of will help you then afterwards build that story. So part 1 is how they got there. How did you find out about the organization or program, or why did you choose that organization or program? Part 2, tell what they did. Tell me a little about what you did, or what did you experience? Was there anything that surprised you? And then part 3 is, what difference did it make? So what did you like about the program or the experience? What was one thing you learned? How did, going through VITA help you, achieve your personal goal? And what are you up to now? As we think about it, stories have usually a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so we want to show that in that process, and hopefully these tips for some of the ways to conduct your interview will make that story building process run more smoothly. So great impact stories usually follow some similar structures. So who is the story about, and what is their situation? Always start off with some character development. So we want to, usually there's a main character, and who is that involved? So develop a little bit of backstory at the beginning. How did they connect to the organization? What did your organization do? What obstacles or challenges were there to overcome? So with this question, I like to think about, as Darren mentioned, he was talking about some like superhero stories or Marvel stories, and I think about how every good story usually has a protagonist and antagonist. So it has the good person and the villain, but the villain doesn't necessarily have to be a person. So think about it like that, maybe fighting poverty or systemic racism or things that could be the villain. And so think about it like that, and show that there is an obstacle that a family might be facing. Then how is the person's life different now? So from the experience they went through at the organization. And then make sure to connect the story back to the goal. what is the call to action? At the end, you want to make sure that there's some type of call to action, whether it's to donate funds to your organization, whether it's to encourage people to call their congressman or senator to, to advocate for VITA legislation for increased VITA funding, or to advocate, again, tie it back to that call to action, whatever is that your goal that you're making. And then especially try to use direct quotes if possible. Because again, when you're getting the words directly from the person who's going through the experience, it's just much more powerful to the reader. And then another tip, again, does your story do some or all of these? Some of the best stories for nonprofit organizations include the following. They let people tell their own stories. So if you have the opportunity, maybe if you can do, if you have the resources to create a video, I think that would be great, because you're actually letting the person who's gone through the experience tell the story. Now, that may not necessarily apply in all cases, but if it's possible, try to do that. One cool thing I did with Prosperity Now was about a little less than a year ago, we did interviews for VITA, VITA Awareness Day and EITC Awareness Day. So if you go on YouTube and go to VITA, #VITAWorks on the Prosperity Now YouTube channel, you can see some of the different stories that were collected. You may see a familiar face because I did one of those stories, or participated in one of those stories with Justin. So I would encourage you to look at some resources. Again, don't recreate the wheel. There's tons of resources out there. Share stories that connect people. Again, people like to feel that they're not the only ones going through a situation. Create stories that inspire, so that they're inspired to do something, or that they feel some type of inspiration. I don't know if anyone's been watching this TV show, Ted Lasso, on Apple TV. I love it because I think that's what it does. The stories in that show really inspire. And I think that's why so many people have been having such a impactful experience with that show. Sorry, diverged a little bit, but I think it's really great that you see that people are getting pushed to or inspired to do more. And so compel people to act. Again, make sure there's a call to action, especially when with the type of stories that we're trying to tell. Make sure that there is that call to action. And then, as kind of Ginny said, don't wait till the last minute. Make it a habit to collect your stories every so often. Maybe try to make it a goal that, you collect 3 stories a month or something, or, and then have a library of stories, because then when that time comes that you need a story, whether it's that grant proposal, whether it's, because you're partnering with this or with that, like whatever reason, you have a library of stories. And then maybe consider showcasing it. So Catalyst Miami, actually organization I work for, just recently launched a story hub. And so you can go onto our website and kind of just check out how we've highlighted stories. It's stories.catalystmiami.org, and how we've highlighted our stories to connect with the different initiatives that we have. And we'll continue, we just launched it, but our idea is that we'll continue to build this story hub and have a place for all the stories can be seen. Right now, I think they're mostly stories, text stories with pictures, but we'll hope to bring more video stories and different types of stories. Also, if you want to improve on your story collection, story building process, actually, I worked with Darren once and we did this. NPR has the Moth, which is where you can get experiences where you can go in person to tell a story and kind of maybe challenge you to break out of your shell. Because I had some know that sometimes storytelling could be a little bit scary. And so consider other resources like that, where you can better build your story creating habits. But I think this is the end. I hope you all gained something. I didn't get to see the chat when because it was blocked, but if there's any questions, I'll try to address them now. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Chris. As I work to reshare my screen. So y'all, this is the Q&A time. We have a bit of time for questions. So if folks have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And while folks are, a question just came in from Katie. So Katie has a question for you, Chris. She said, I saw there's a submit a story option on the Catalyst Miami story site. How has that been working? How do you imagine that working in the future?
Oh, thanks, Katie. That's a great question. So we actually just launched it. I want to say the Story Hub launched about 3 weeks ago, so I don't know as much, but I think we're envisioning that anyone who has participated through a Catalyst Miami program could go ahead and enter and share their stories. And then ideally, I think we'd follow up to better like clean up the story, make sure that it's seamless from beginning to end, and then we'll post it on there. But I'll follow up too and find out what the vision is and hopefully get you an answer back to you. So, oh, and thank you for sharing it on the chat. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks, Katie. I have one more question for you all, then it'll be about time for breakout rooms. So y'all feel free to keep dropping in questions. But the one question that I had is, we've all had the situation where a funder's like, I need a story tomorrow about such and such situation that's quite specific. Do you all have any best practices for those situations? Is it just having a story bank? Do you have a set of clients ready to reach out to in short situations? Do you all have any experience or best practices to share there?
This is Chris. I'll go. I don't know if Jenny has, but I guess for me, I think the story bank is one thing. That's why it's key to have that, so you're not rushing at the last minute, because I know that's happened in the past. Another thing is having I think I mentioned before, at least for me, I know that there's probably a list of 10 tax clients that I have that are like my constant returners. And like they will go through heaven and earth to make sure that they get me as their tax preparer. And so I think if I were to reach out to one of them and ask them for a favor or something of, hey, can I share your story? I think that more likely a lot of them would say, I don't want to say 100%, but I probably would get one or two that at least say yes, just because they're appreciative of the service that we provide. So think about those returning clients that come in, year out, and we'll do anything to make sure to get their taxes done and consider them as a possible option for a story.
That's great. I don't have a great answer for this because I don't work with clients directly. So usually when we need a story, it's like, do you know a tax site that's doing this specific thing in this area? And I think it's really similar where we have certain folks that we work with a lot throughout the year, and we're always calling on, much like you do with certain clients. So I think definitely like building those relationships with clients who will actually pick up the phone when you call is incredibly important.
Well, thanks, y'all. So with that, we're actually going to transition to breakout rooms very briefly. So I've set some questions to prompt the breakout rooms for you all. And the 2 questions for you to keep in mind are, how have you used storytelling to reach partners, funders, or clients? And how do you collect stories or use data in your story collection? So with that, I'll kick it to Justin to open up breakout rooms. Yeah, so that's all this to say. Thank you again for the conversations. Hopefully they were insightful. I would love if folks could put in the chat a 1 word, a theme, so a few things that came up in your chat, just that you could kind of briefly share as you wrap up. I'll try to shout some of those out that folks come up with. Yeah, y'all tell us what you heard via chat. A few of the things that I heard were folks talking about the best ways to collect stories, whether if you've got a database, how do you organize those stories? Ashley mentioned putting a face to the numbers. Carlene mentioned intentionality and really making a space for stories. I heard a few folks talking about ways that they were going to collect stories in a different way than they've done before after hearing some of the things in this session. And oh, this is great. Some folks told their own stories, and I guess with that, like practicing powerful storytelling, that's become the best version of that for yourself. I love this, have the marketing team to collect stories and work with those in your internal organizations that are very, very strong at story collection already. As well as tapping volunteers to tell general stories like Sarah mentioned. Seems like we have some good takeaways, and some folks are going to do some really, really interesting things. And I see a few more coming in, but just wanted to thank you all so much for coming out to this session. And I wanted to take a second before we kind of wrap to let you know that the session after this is the small group discussion session. And in that session, folks will get a chance to do some of what we did at the end of this session, to talk about what they've heard so far in VITACon, to talk about best practices. We have a few kind of prompts for you. That session is going to begin at 4:15. So we'll end here in just a minute or two, but know that the next session is gonna start at 4:15. And there's another Zoom link separate for that, just as it's been for all of the other workshop sessions so far. So yeah, excited to see y'all in the next one. But let me get back here one more time and check to see if there's anything else, any revelations that came through the chat. Yeah, looks like Brad highlighted dealing with the release of information and making sure you're getting a release form from clients. There's a few other, Mary said that I'm thinking of getting sociology or journalism students involved. Lots of great ideas here. Oh, bingo, great call. Justin, do you want to call?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Yeah, I'm super down for bingo. Everyone, yeah. There weren't any associated bingo words with a voter registration session, but so what I did was we're going to pull 6 words instead for this session to make up for the last one and then this one. So the first 3 words I pulled already, and those words are credit for other dependents, identity theft, and IP pin. Again, those words are credits for other dependents, identity theft, and IP pin. Very identity heavy, this one. And the next 3 are recruitment, Form 8888, and first-time home buyer. So again, those words are recruitment, Form 8888, and first-time home buyer. So we've given out 9 words so far today. We'll give out a bunch more probably throughout the small group discussions, so we can round out. And yeah, Katie, I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. But no, we are super thrilled to have all of you on. And yeah, that's all I got for bingo.
Perfect. I think that's it for me too. Y'all, we can wrap up. We'll see y'all in the next one.